So I'm here today at the SSL HQ, something I have always wanted to do. Dale's kindly brought me down to see the SSL Oracle console. We're going to go take a look at it.
Let's go.
Moment by moment, session by session, is just in front of you as a channel strip. There are some setup type things that are in this detail view, and the other thing that happens with in a similar way in the center section, but basically when you access a detail view by selecting it, so you arm detail view, you select it, and then this navigator gets brought into play. So basically you can, from here you can get to everything, every switch function, every setup function.
Can you have two on either? Can you?
So yeah, so I can focus
well.
this up. Yeah, so I mean this is kind of one of the other sort of benefits of this kind of way that the control surface works.
Right, that's cool.
Yeah. So actually here I've got channel 13 and 14. So basically I've arranged the bays now, so I've got mirrors of one another. So if I move one, they're all working in parallel. But basically I can have separate control here to the control that I've got here. So there's a multiple ways that you can have control beyond just literally touching the channel.
But you could also have channel 1 here.
Yeah.
And then you could have channel 9
Yeah, exactly.
here.
So I've got channel 1 there, and now I've got 13 to 14 here. So it takes seconds to do that. And the reason why this is a kind of armed function is so that basically, because some things like to most of the sort of things you're adjusting all the time in the channel strip are just in front of you in the channel strip.
Yeah.
Things that's kind of like setup functions, we put in these kind of wing sections. So fundamentally you're selecting to access like things like channel routing, and once this is set up, you save that and you don't need to sort of play with it until you come back to it. But by making the detail view something that is armed, it means that you can always see the channel metering and not get interrupted by the detail view when you select things.
That is really familiar because that's exactly how I work with the S4.
Right.
So I work channel by channel majority of the time, and I focus on one channel, bring up all the processing that's on that one channel at a time. So that's all very familiar.
And there's kind of lots of useful things that so I mean you can get, as I say, you can get to everything from these detailed views, including things like the processing order. So something really that's useful is this shows you what the processing order is for the large fader path and the small fader path.
And you can use EQ on large fader and small fader.
Yeah, basically. So there's one EQ section which you're switching between paths, but basically by coming here and activating the routing switching, I can then see all of the options that there are. So if I want to put
there's a few.
Yeah, there are. Well, because you've got basically there's however many permutations of 4 or 5 processing sections. Yeah, so if I want to, currently I've got my EQ in the large fader path. If I want to put the EQ in the small fader path, basically I pick one of these options with the EQ. So
and that's obviously per channel.
Yeah, so basically each panel. So now I've configured it so that basically the EQ is in the small fader path, and I can see here that the EQ is ahead of my insert point.
Yeah.
So in the case where you've got dynamics in your insert point, one of the classic things you might want to do when you've got dynamics in an insert point is is your EQ ahead of your dynamics, or is your EQ after your dynamics? And you probably want to compare the two.
Definitely.
So basically that's what this order switch is in the control surface in the EQ section. So basically by pressing this order switch, I can move the EQ up and down between.
That's brilliant.
So basically,
it's the little things. It's just that alone. It's just like someone who designed this console actually knows how to design console. Like it's all like that. Just that. That's such a just why that's perfect. Yes.
Yeah. So and equally if you had if I
see, that's the kind of thing that really gets me going, because that. I do that all day long, and then it's like someone just went, "Oh, well, you should have a button for that."
A button for it. I love it. Yeah.
And so one of the sort of principles that we've tried to apply is that where you've got a situation where you want to A/B something, that there's a switch for it that allows you to do that. So coming back to that, the inserts, for example, as we've sort of said before, you've got inserts in the large fader path and inserts in the small fader path, and in this routing display, there's a picture that shows you that currently my insert point for the large fader is ahead of all the other processing. My EQ's at the bottom of that signal flow, but again I can move the EQ up now, so now the EQ's ahead of the insert. So that's just moving the order of the,
and that's just literally buttons.
Yeah, just a button. So wherever the EQ
button
is, so this is in the EQ section, you basically move the EQ up and down to do that. Now how you switch the insert in and out. Basically, these soft keys change the function of the switches that are up here. So at the moment, I've got them selected to insert. So, and this label tells me that's the LF insert in and out. So basically, to switch my insert in and out, I just press this button. So that's insert
So
in.
we're just auditioning, like if we had dynamics. We
Exactly.
Just
So that's
rather
insert
than going
out
over here and
exactly.
going like that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm doing it
If
with
you
the
bypass
console.
the edge.
Yeah.
And similarly in the small fader part. So without any sort of options or any things pressed here, I'm controlling my large fader levels. If I select SF for this bay, I'm now controlling my small fader levels. So this is my monitor path now. And then the other thing you may have noticed is that this label here has changed now to say SF insert.
Yeah.
So now this is my small fader insert in and out.
You're on. That's
Small
just
fader
on
here and
this.
large fader.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the other things. So in a situation where I need to balance large fader path and small fader path,
And they could be on the same channel.
I can focus these on separate. So this is currently focus 1 to 8. This is also focus 1 to 8. And basically, by pressing the small fader button now I've got the small fader path and the large fader path on 2 separate faders in the control surface.
Well, I presume you can bank across those individually as well.
Yeah, I would imagine so. Yeah.
So yeah.
So you could have large fader 1 to 8 and small fader 17 to 24 or something.
Yeah, this just follows whatever this base selection. So the thing that I've used here is the ability to focus both of these bays on the same faders, but have different functions set up in either bay. This is one of the things that is, so if you come from an analog console world, this is something that's you have to get your head around a little bit, because you just can never do this in an analog
instead of
console.
having all the faders there, you just choose which window you're looking at.
And people who are familiar with digital consoles and it's like, well, this is bread and butter to how
This
they
just
work.
all of this, what you're talking about, all just comes so familiar.
Well, this is like the S4, isn't it?
It's just like the S4,
Yeah,
but an
exactly.
analog version.
And so sort of in terms of how you approach how to use this console, you can start by saying, okay, I'm going to lay out my 24 channels across 24 faders. I'll switch the faders that I'm looking at on here, and I'll just treat them as mono channels. And in that way, you're kind of looking at a 24 channel analog inline mixing console. End of story. But then you think, well, actually, I've got a stereo source here. I'm going to put that on one fader, so you make a stereo channel, and now all of a sudden you're putting more than 24 analog channels into what is basically.
Well, ultimately, if you choose the 48 channel version of this test and you stereo them all, you end up with 24 faders that are all stereo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can freely mix and match those things. The other thing that you can do is you can put faders in different layers simultaneously. So if I switch to this bay, or then I've got my kick, snare, and overhead and percussion. So I basically put all my percussion in this bay of the console, and I go back here. But so the percussion is not only in bay 1, it's also in bay 3, because so you can use these bays to arrange. So if you've got string section, you can say, I'm going to put my strings on this bay, I'm going to put my horns on that bay, and you could sit with the mix in front of you, mix those things, and think, oh, actually I need to rebalance the strings. I'm just going to press my strings layer, bring my strings up, rebalance.
It's like a way of creating folders.
I was going to say, it's very much like folder tracks, but you're just using them as bays.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very brief romp through one of the things that I say to people about there's an awful lot of sophistication in the console in terms of aux being mono or stereo, being pre-fader, post-fader, small fader, pre-large fader, lots of different sort of small processing elements. The great benefit of a digitally controlled analog console is in all of that configuration. You get it the way you want it, you save it, it'll just come back exactly that way.
You try and use this console without digital recall. You can't.
No, exactly. And to a certain extent, that's why the sort of level of sophistication moves on, if you like, in terms of it's because
it's actually practical to have it now.
Yeah, it is. You're not going to lose someone.
One thing I was going to ask you is why have we got width here?
It's because this is a mono channel and this is a stereo channel.
Yeah. Right.
So that's the simple answer.
Okay.
So you will see that there's a balance on the input of the stereo channel, but not on the mono channel. Gotcha. And equally, if I made this a stereo channel with channels 1 and 2, I'd get a balance control, and I'd get
that makes sense.
So on the panning for the stereo,
Yeah.
channels. So obviously got width and pan. Width would presume that the stereo channels are just panned
Yeah.
hard left and right, and,
Yeah.
and it's going to essentially mono those as you bring it down. But the panning,
Yeah, it does. Well, it does.
Like
It does
ventilation.
something. It does something a little bit clever, basically. So what it does is, as you pan it right or left, it collapses the width. So it basically moves the signal but collapses the image. So so without having to have multiple controls to do that sort of thing,
Yeah.
it just does something that is going to move
was
the
wondering
image
what the-
but not collapse. Yeah.
there's several ways that could have been done.
It does, yeah. I mean, so a classic way that you might do it in a stereo channel is you convert the channel to mono and then you can pan
Yes.
it. And this kind of does a halfway thing. So it says, okay, you want to move the image a bit, and so it's going to collapse the image a bit and move it at the same time. So it's just a nice little
Fabulous.
it's a
That's
little
practical.
way to,
Love
yeah,
that.
it is.
That's what, like something you'd really use.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that philosophy is inherited from the way that our digital consoles, which also have the concept of mono channels and stereo channels, and so that's a block that we've been round a few times, and it's like, well, actually, in practice, this really works and is easy and it's one control and all that sort of thing. Andy, so I'm conscious that you were asking me some questions about workstation control, particularly about. It was more about
Yeah, it
plug-in
was.
control from.
So basically, I've currently got an Avid S4.
Yeah.
And that is very much quite an integral part
Do you
of
want to jump into
workflow
the
being
seats or
so quick.
for a sec?
And my question being is, essentially, can this replace my S4? And how much can I control in terms of one thing that's really good with the S4? And the thing is, I'm open to keeping my S4. I'll have both consoles. But the main thing is with the S4, I can map all the plug-in control, so I dart around a console very, very quickly.
Yeah.
With plug-in control.
Yeah.
That's something I don't think I'd want to lose. And as well with the Atmos panning, it's really quick because I use all the panning, could do height adjustment
Yeah.
rather than just left, right.
Yeah.
So it's really, I mean, I'm open to keeping the S4.
It would be nice if you didn't have to. Wouldn't it?
It'd be nice if I didn't have to. I'm still going to have this. This is going to be my centre piece in the middle. It's just then where I put my S4. So I might be able to break it out and kind of rack it in to the left and right.
Yeah.
Obviously, with the kind of 360 plug-in control that is part of like the UF8
Yeah.
thing, is that something that can work with this?
Well, there's different strands to this topic area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as it stands today, I'm not sure if Neil showed you yet, but when you flip to the door layer, you're literally getting the exact same door control that someone with a UF8, like where
Cool.
it uses the 360 for the door control aspect. In terms of specific things, like with the S4, the flexibility you have to map plug-in parameters, flip them to the faders, all of that stuff. Huey can't do that.
Right.
So you're not going to have that same ability.
Yeah.
In summary.
So one thing I did want to actually go over was the buses.
Yeah.
So you have routing, so you can route. So let's say, for argument's sake, I've got these channels: kick, snare, hi-hat, and I want to route those to a drum bus.
Yeah.
Can you can route those to the stereo bus?
Yeah, you've got. I mean, basically, so this is the bus routing display
That's
that you've
it,
got
yeah.
here, and there are. It's the top row of things are your main buses. So basically, by selecting a channel, you activate this routing control here.
Gotcha.
So from this routing control, there's a sort of sub-selection. So normally, this is routing to the track buses, and so if I select track bus 1, 2, and this is at the moment this is routing off the large fader, and I can tell it's routing off the large fader because fundamentally there's a sort of green is large fader, orange, red is small fader.
Yeah.
If I switch this SF button here,
Yeah,
I now
you're right.
change to route from the small fader. So I'm now routing from the small fader to the track buses. So that's to the track buses. The track buses can just go out to the console. That's one thing. And the track buses appear on the centre section of the metering here. So maybe if I just we've got kick drumming as well. So if I pick the kick drum up here, and at the moment kick drum's routed to 1 and 2.
Yeah.
If I switch it off 1 and 2, I can route it to 3 and 4. and or is it stops playing? Yeah, there you go. So
2, 3, and 4.
yeah, I've got so I've just switched
There
it
we
off,
go.
so it's now
Yeah.
on 3 and 4, and that's routing off the.
And
the
these
large
track
tape.
buses,
Yeah.
these have all got the stereo width on them,
Okay.
the insert
Okay.
on them.
So first thing is the track buses can go straight out the console. You don't have to do anything.
Okay.
There are 8 stereo groups in the center of the console, and that's so that you select looking at them on this page, this fader here. And the other thing is, so basically, if I bring up the detail view for these, so these, then you'll be able to see how they're structured basically. So this is the kind of detail view for the track buses, and on the left hand side you can see the input for the stereo group, and you see there's a source button for the stereo group. So the stereo group inputs have got an external input, or they can pick up the track buses in pairs.
Right.
Okay. So if I, at the moment that's fed from an external input, but if I select to look at if I switch this source over to the track bus,
Yeah.
this is now picking up track buses 1 and 2 as this would be 1 and 2, this would be 3 and 4. So that's the way the track buses work. This will be, if this is sourced from a track bus, it's 1 and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can individually choose. And basically this allows you to use these stereo groups as a kind of mixture of either external returns from things like stereo reverbs, or to use them as stereo groups for busing and that sort of thing. So this is your stereo, your group. You can feed it to the main mux buses. You can even feed it to track buses. So you can gang up stereo groups into another sort of stereo master group, if you like.
Yeah. Yeah.
The stereo group has image control so this is what we were talking about in terms of width. So basically you can control the width of it. You can control the balance of it.
You've got direct outs as well.
There's
that
direct.
as well.
Yeah, exactly.
You've got your insert.
Yeah, there's
I'm loving this direct out.
yeah. So
Because it's just so
you can
amazing.
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
if you've got enough interfaces, you can print. You can print all the small faders, all the large faders, all the stereo outs, all the main buses, all in one pass, basically. And then you just bring stuff back at you.
Because what I've got on my interface going back in is I've got from channel 17 up to 64, they're going to be my direct outs off of my 48 channels of summing.
Okay.
And then my 16 channels off my stereo tracks are going to be my direct outs on my 1 to 16.
Okay.
And then I've got 1 to 16 for my monitoring.
Yeah.
And then I've got 17 to 64 for my summing out to the console.
So that's the stereo groups. So the stereo groups have a relationship with the track buses. So as I said, this is bass drums routing to 3 and 4. The other thing that there is are main buses. So you've got main bus A, which is typically a mix bus, but there's also mixed stereo. There's main buses B, C, and D, which are also stereo buses, basically.
Reminds me of the Excel desk.
Yes. And you route to them in the same way, basically. So I come over here, so if I take those off track buses 1 and 2, if I route this now to main bus D, for example, so this is now now routed the bass to the bass drum to main bus D, and basically I can pull up the detail view for main bus D. So this is my master level for main bus D. Main bus D also has a stereo insert. This is another way that you've got the sort of stereo busing in the console. The main buses don't have the image control. They've got a sort of a small amount of balance control, but they don't. But they, in some ways, you could say, okay, well, I've got 16 or 8 stereo groups here, but I've also got another 3 stereo groups in the main buses.
Are they parallel, or do one feed into the other?
They're parallel.
Okay.
Yeah, they are parallel. The thing that you can do with the main mix buses, because the main mix buses were kind of designed partly for stemming ideas as well.
Yeah.
So the thing you can do with the main mix buses is that you can route them to main bus A. So basically, bus B, C, and D can all be routed to main bus A. So you could create 3 separate sort of stem mixes on B, C, and D, and then route them to main bus A as your main
And you
bits.
can have A, B, C, and D here on.
You can
Control.
route these stereo channels to the level control for main A, B,
Okay,
and CD
it's
is
only
done
there.
from these
Right,
faders.
okay,
There's this
gotcha.
fader here,
Yeah.
basically.
How do you select to control A with that?
You,
Oh, you just
so this
you
is
literally
A,
press it.
B,
Yeah.
C, and D,
Gotcha,
basically.
yeah,
So if I move the D level down
Yeah, and then
and I go
press,
back to
yeah,
A,
yeah,
that's the A level, that's the D level,
Yeah,
and
gotcha.
so it just it's
Simple.
pretty straightforward.
The main buses have direct outs.
They
Or main
do,
outputs,
yeah, they
That's the
do,
way, yeah, that's great.
and they have inserts.
So I mean,
as well.
one simple application for that, for example, is you could have a mix coming out of A. You could have another one with a bus compressor running
Yeah.
coming out B. You could have another
Pull
one
them all in and stem master
with a mastering chain on D, and actually just print them all at the same time if you want.
Yeah,
to.
you
That's
could do.
just as a
Yeah,
simple
yeah,
explanation.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that was kind of the principle of those buses
yeah.
basically.
You could basically pull in, let's say, drums, drum bus, bass bus,
Of course.
instrument bus, and a vocal bus.
Of course,
and then do a
these
stem
are
master.
not quite as important as perhaps they would have been on the Excel desk, which only had those 4 buses.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Because of course because you've got the groups with the direct outs, you've got so much more flexibility to create more
Yeah.
groups. So
Yeah.
they're kind of just additional, I guess, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Honestly, it is mind blowing how well thought out it is. I mean, yeah,
And to be honest,
that's crazy.
there are, there's some other stuff in here in relating to creating submixes that are, I mean, some of it is used typically when you're tracking, not really mixing, but so the auxiliaries, for example, per channel can feed, so you can create a mix to main bus B on auxiliaries 3 and 4. You can make an auxiliary mix to bus C on 5 and 6, D on 7 and 8, and the benefit of those is you can just take a group of channels, use the auxiliaries to create a mix for those particular buses, and that's not using it. The only on those channels, or those auxes are feeding those buses. The other auxes on the other channels are still free to feed the aux buses, because it redirects the routing. The main use of it is for creating things like headphone, when you've got a tracking session and you've got a headphone mixer. So you can use the track buses to create separate sort of stem mixes, if you like, for the headphone mixer. Those then get distributed by the headphone system. But you've got a way, basically by putting the auxes on the faders, which you do by pressing the aux button and then selecting your faders here, you can then control that stem mix that's going to those headphone mixers. So if somebody sort of says, actually,
Such a better visual way of doing that.
yeah,
than
it is. Yeah,
traditional.
I mean, one of the sort of design compromises, shall we say, in terms of the control surface is sort of the auxiliary controls, because if the console's got 10 auxiliary buses and we've only really got 2 controls here that's being used to access those, and part of that balance is the fact that we can, by pressing a button, just bring those auxes down onto faders fundamentally. So you've got
Yeah, I mean, ultimately you've got aux 1 and 2 there.
yeah, exactly,
Easy, probably the ones you're going to use first and most commonly.
yeah.
And then, if people use more than 2 auxes, you just spill them onto the faders, and
Yeah. Yeah, and
it's
basically
not really a compromise.
this end press cycles around what you're controlling, and on other consoles the other analog consoles, that might be a switch between 2 different stereo auxes, whereas this isn't. All of those auxes are active all of the time.
All the auxes can be mono or stereo.
They can, yeah. And I mean, and that's basically
It's unbelievable.
the application here. Just so at the moment, so in this control application, I can see I've got 4 stereo buses and I've got 2 mono buses. But if I want 3 stereo buses and 4 mono buses, I click that, and now everything has changed. So you'll have noticed that those where there was a pan control, now there's now a level control. That meters display has changed to show you there's 4 mono auxes, and equally, if I think, actually, I'm going to turn it back, I turn it back. It all just switches instantaneously.
Is that O control?
Yeah, that's the O controller. So it's used for kind of setup configurations for the console. I mean,
But you can change it whilst in a mix. You can just
So, one thing I've read, and I've deliberately not read up on not everything on this because I have something to talk about today.
Sure.
So, obviously we've got the 16 buses.
Yeah.
And and then there's 16 flex buses.
Oh yeah, that are these these. So I call them stereo flex groups, and it's because in some analog consoles you might have echo returns, which are ways of getting stereo inputs to a mix bus that you may not be printing, but they're there just to give you reverbs in your mix or what have you. And equally, you might have audio subgroups where you're picking up buses to mix them together to create something that you're going to put an insert in, and these buses do that double duty basically, and that double duty is defined by what you're feeding in. So if they're picking up the track buses, they're acting as audio subgroups. If they're picking up an external input, they're acting like a return. And one of the things that is interesting about them is that you can route them to mix buses and you can route them to track buses as well.
So they're part of a print.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So you can really use them as submixes that you're then you're gonna bring.
It's verging on obscene.
It's unbelievable.
Right,
That's
isn't
what
it?
it is. Yeah. I mean, there was a few people said, "Oh, it's too expensive." It is. It's underpriced. It's ridiculous. It's like, I mean,
The challenge with this console is that in half an hour it's difficult to understand the depth of what there is in the console.
Absolutely. This is why I think between Paul and myself we're probably going to be making a lot of content about
Yeah,
it.
sure.
To
Well, when I left
cover
the-
bit by bit, probably.
when I left that demonstration, I was like, I get it, it's good. I really like it. And then I was just like, 24 channels of summing, 24 channels of EQ, some buses. Oh, yeah, it's a lot of money for that. And then then you look into it a bit more and you go, oh, but it has this, then it has this, small fader, big fader, direct outs, inserts on both, all of this, even just the dynamic EQ. I didn't look too much into the dynamic. I think I got focused too much on the Bus Plus. And the dynamic EQ being on there, and it's like it's a fully fledged dynamic EQ there.
The power of this processing, and there's so things that people. I mean, what I'm going to talk to you about now is going to take a while to get your head around because it confuses me sometimes. But in the original 4000 console, there was an insert point prior to the main bus processing and the main fader, and post the main bus processing and post the main fader. What that meant you could do is that you could patch from before the bus processor to after the bus processor. And what that meant was, so that basically took your main fader out of circuit, but if you were tracking, that didn't matter. It also took your bus compressor out of circuit. But what it did mean was that you could patch your bus compressor across something else. So now you could use your bus compressor as a part of a different, people typically would use it for like bass guitar compressors because it's quite nice on those kind of sources. And you can actually do the same thing. This is kind of the first console in a long time for SSL that has got a pre and a post master bus insert point, basically. And that allows you to do things like put a compressor after the master fader so you can drive into the compressor, or limiter, I should say. But equally, it also allows you to patch across that and use the dynamic EQ and the bus compressor in a stereo group. And there are ways that you can also split that up as well, using the fact you can move the pre-fader insert points as well.
Can you change whether it's EQ then compressor?
Yeah. So basically, this drop down here, this little menu here.
Gotcha.
These are all the order components. So
there's just so many of them. It's like it's like every
combination.
possible
If you take three things and you work out how many combinations there are,
there's
that's
a
the
lot.
number of things.
I think this.
Yeah,
that just seeing that is so good.
Yeah.
Being able to see that.
Yeah.
Visually, you can just see everything you're gonna need to see.
Yeah. So, something that what we didn't have a real word, but we've got sort of a nice function called quick link now, which basically allows you to link together channels. And what this basically means is that these are now they're temporary links.
Yeah.
And
That's cool.
the faders is cool,
Yeah.
panning is cool, but one of the things that's quite nice about this is that if you've got EQ, basically it also does all of the EQs as well.
So that would be linked. So if you were, and is that linked? So say for instance, your low band is say plus 10, and the low band's plus 5 on another one. They'll go like that. Yeah.
So, and the reason why it's called quick link is that it's basically a quick way of making. So you've got string section, you just want to make it a bit brighter. You just say, okay,
definitely.
I'm going to make it a bit brighter. Yeah, that's perfect. The moment you release quick link it, now you've made that change, it lets it go, and you can.
These little things get me so excited.
I mean, obviously, the part of the thing I like about this, for my personal workflow, is that way you're going to be able to take a whole mix, spill it down to the individual groups, put processing on, stereo faders. It's just that super tidy.
Yeah.
In my kind of slightly OCD mind, that way of being able to just have it all tied together.
The thing that I think is interesting about a control surface and about a console really is that it's an organising tool.
Yes.
Fundamentally.
Yes.
And I think there is something about the fact that with a channel strip and a sort of vertical layout, you can map things in your head across the control surface to a point where you kind of forget about it. It's like you can say, okay, my drum mix is here.
I always have the same order, so
Exactly.
without even having to read the strips, you kind of know everything.
I know where
anyway.
everything. Yeah, I have the same.
So having that, and then obviously because like the kind of grouping capability of this is something you usually see on consoles far in excess of this price.
Yeah.
So having being able to assign drums to essentially one fader. And having guitars on another fader and all your vocals on one other fader. And being able to do those sort of large scale submixing, as it were.
I mean, so for example, in that, they're a VCA control. I mean, we call them VCAs, which is historic for voltage controlled amplifiers, but it's all digital control really. But everybody, if you're familiar with SSLs, you'll know them as VCA control faders. But basically, I can set these up to control a bunch of my large faders. So if this is all my my drums, for example. So now this is basically, I've got it on non-moving fader. I've put it on moving fader. So now I've put all my drums on. So I can.
So that's almost. It's basically like making a group inside on the Pro Tools mixer.
Yeah.
But that's really good in itself.
So I can label that.
That's something I'll be doing a lot of.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like
Because obviously you can still reach
sorts
over
of
and make
things,
minor adjustments to
Yeah,
the
no,
drums.
that's right. Yeah,
as
so you
well,
think,
is
actually, I need a
those-
snare
is-
loader. Okay, no.
okay, so so
The idea is
as
when you're
well-
mixing, if you go, I just want all the drums up a bit, you can move one fader.
Yeah, but that doesn't. Those faders don't necessarily need to be on this bank.
No.
So that can be doing that, and then that's moving on a bank
Exactly.
that's outside of view.
So that means when you're mixing, you could be doing some guitars or synths.
Yeah.
Do you know what, I
on
just
here.
want to bring the drums down a touch.
Yeah.
And the other thing that these control faders can do is they can not only control the large fader, they can also control the small fader, either and the small fader. So similarly, I can assign these small faders here, and if you look at the small fader here now, then when I'm moving that up and down, it's moving both of those up and down simultaneously. So there's a lot of ways that you can sort of structure your control.
So a limit to how many faders can be controlled in that way?
No.
Just all of them,
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
Love it. Okay.
And the other thing that you can do is you can create a hierarchy as well. So you could have drums, bass, horns, strings, and then you could say, okay, I want all of these controlled by this last one, and create yourself a master control fader, basically.
So subgroups of subgroups, essentially.
Yeah, basically, yeah. And that's control. It's not kind of audios, but it's just control. So there's a with an audio subgroup, you take audio signals and you put them into a summing amplifier that is the group of those signals. This is control. So this is basically saying I'm going to in parallel control all of these things at the same time.
Name one other console that can do half of what this can do.
Half of it.
Half.
Maybe a duality.
Yeah.
But
It's unbelievable. Just all these little things that just wouldn't be possible without a digital aspect like that in itself. It's just there's so many things.
the nearest thing would probably be duality in terms of being able to for grouping and things like that. But even then, it doesn't come close.
But even like some people were saying, oh, the screens and all this, but I get why it's screens because there's so much to display.
Yeah,
if that wasn't screens, it would be.
And to be honest, the other thing that we've tried to do is basically not clutter the screens up with too much. So you come out of these and you're just now looking at meters, bus routing, and you put you're in your mix.
How do you get to the VCA meters?
The VU meters.
VU.
It's this. Yeah. So basically now you've got VU meters in front of you, and you can control the brightness of all these screens.
Yeah, they are quite bright at the moment.
They are, and that's because these lights in here are ridiculous. So, it's. So yeah, so basically there's an options menu here that I can control. So I can see I can turn the screen thicknesses down to.
That's appealing.
And I do honestly, the other thing that I can do is I can control the logo LED, so I can turn that down as well. Well, that's just because, you know, if you're in a dimly lit room, you want everything backed off in terms of the brightness and stuff. So, yeah, so you can independently control the brightness of these screens, the LED colours, these screens, and yeah. Just because, you know,
I'm blown away.
Honestly, you just take it home with you.
Oh my god!
Mike was saying just now as well, great thing to save it as a template, and that's you set up ready for mixing.
This is it.
Yeah. I mean, you know, literally.
You just drop the tracks into you.
So, that's one thing. One thing to quickly ask is, let's say for argument's sake, I'm working with Dale. And we work on something on his console. Yeah. And then we go, right, save that. Yeah. Let's go to mine. Yeah. We'll now go work on my system and work in my studio. Yeah. Load that in and we're back where we left off. Yeah.
There are even. So one of the things that you will see in this console, because it's not easy to hide it.
Is that even settings though as well and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So the only thing that probably won't come back, and it could, but I don't think it makes any sense, is things like, so the monitoring system has got some base management capability. So you can put a high pass filter and a low pass filter to make one of the outputs a sub output.
It's unique to your system, isn't it? Rather than that makes
so if, you know, you wouldn't want when you recall a project for it to frig about with your room settings.
Definitely. That makes total sense.
Yeah. And the other thing that happens when you recall a project is that it turns the monitor volume down. It's kind of the first thing it does is it loads the project. That's just in case what you've set up versus what's being wired on.
Well, if my speakers are not particularly big or loud and I've got the volume cranked up, and you go to your place with PLC QB1s in them, you're probably going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit like where we tested the Amphions.
A little bit like when testing Amphions.
Yeah. So it does that exactly for that reason. It does it as a safety feature just to make sure that
it's just very, very sensible. It's the kind of thing I would do myself normally, and now I don't have to do that.
Exactly. But it is interesting. It's like when someone first understands. So I just press this button, I load a project. Yeah, press play. I can't hear anything. Yeah, that's because the volume's been turned down. Just turn the volume up. It'll be fine. So fundamentally, there's an application called OControl. OControl. There's a few different things in OControl, and there's still a bit more work to do in some of it. But you know, it's a development platform. But OControl can work online or offline, basically. So one of the first things you do when you boot up OControl, you switch the whole system on to start with, is you say to this, I want to connect to a control system, and that's because if you don't connect it to a system, it's just working offline. So you can load a project, you can see what your track names are, you can adjust your track names, you can change your state, you can do everything pretty.
Ultimately connect to multiple systems then?
Not multiple systems, but. And this is going back to something.
Choose between them, as it were. Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
This goes back to something you were talking about earlier, where you were saying you could just switch the whole thing on remotely and get on it. And almost that's true. At the moment, the thing that this console does with OControl, basically what happens with OControl is you boot OControl up, and you ask it to connect. It looks across the network to see what Oracle consoles it can find, and then it says, okay, I can find these Oracle consoles.
Thinking of universities that might have 5 studios with them in, and maybe a professor wants to set up the consoles.
Exactly. So
or me.
So what happens is basically this said I can see these OControls, these oracles. Which one do you want to connect to? So you say I want to connect to this one. It doesn't immediately connect. What happens then is that the control surface says, someone's trying to connect to your console. Do you want to allow this? And you then press the button to say yes, connect. Okay. And that's purely a, you've got multiple rooms. You don't want any Tom, Dick and Harry interrupting your session.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
But it would interrupt your workflow of remote control concept, and we need to think about that. But the way that it works currently is, from a safety perspective, is that's how it works. Is it says. Well, do you want to connect?
One of the reasons I was quite interested potentially in the remote control option, I was joking a little bit, but it is a viable thing as a business prospect to do that kind of allow people to remotely control it. But of course, there is the other option for remote tutorials. So if I have a customer who buys an Oracle, I wouldn't necessarily have to travel from where I am to Scotland, for example, to do it. I can actually set up a Zoom call and actually control the console in front of them and say, you know, this is the one thing, and they're going to see the moves I make, and you know, there's things like that which would be fundamentally good.
There's a USB-C for that.
Yeah, well, it's just a USB power source they're using.
That's wicked.
Just the details.
That's just wicked. I just noticed it. I was like, oh my god,
So the other little thing that there is so there's a few things in the control surface. There's a headphone output which is just under the right hand side of the console. It's in under the buffer basically. And there is also an external. There's a talkback mic input on the back. Probably not relevant for a mix session, but that's to do with talking to the studios. However, there's a talkback mic circuit and there's a listen mic circuit, both of which have the legendary SSL listen mic compressor in them, and you can get to all those from the patch bit. So you don't need to use them for the talkback. You can use them as an effect of some description. The other thing is that there's an external input in the control surface as well, which appears as an external source. And the whole idea, in our older consoles, you might have a 3.5mm jack socket. So if somebody's got a phone, they want to play a mix back to you. When phones used to have jack sockets, then you do that. These days, they tend to use Bluetooth as a connection. And that's why, to be honest, what we did here was to say, okay, we'll have a pair of proper balanced inputs so that you can put whatever you want basically. In this room we've got like a little Clark Technic Bluetooth receiver, so I can just pair it up to my phone, and that if somebody wants to play me a mix off a phone, I just call it up on the externals and off to the races basically.
Neil, you mentioned earlier about the really cool way you can use the inputs as mic or line to get an extra bit of drive and saturation.
Yeah, so fundamentally at the moment I can see, because there's a little green LED at the top here. These are set to line inputs. If I call up the detail view for this input channel, for example, you can see, so this input is set from line, but the drive circuitry is part of of what we have. So I can basically switch drive on even though it's a line input, and control my drive level from the. So I can change the second, third harmonic balance, even though it's a line input rather than a mic input.
Is that what that is then?
So this control here, basically, this control is fundamentally a drive control for. So at this end, I think it's second harmonic at this end and third harmonic at this end, and you can dial the amount of it, and you can also say, okay, drive in, drive out. What's the difference between those
that's
two
wicked.
things? You can actually, if you listen quick, you can just hear the relay. So you can hear it switching the circuitry in. I mean, in fact, it's quite interesting. There's quite a lot of things like EQ types. You change between E and G series EQ. You can hear relay switching.
Separate circuits.
Yeah.
It's really good that it's got E and G on it.
Yeah.
I think it's a popular feature from the AWS, of course.
It is, yeah. I mean, there was always a debate ever since we launched the G series console back in 87, 88, where, I mean, not long after we introduced it, people would like the G series EQ, but people also like the E series EQ, and there were quite a few consoles built with kind of half and half, to be honest.
When I had my X rack, I had racks of E series, and I had, I think it's K series, the white ones, and there were certain things that I'd like to use the E series, especially for the brown knob on the bottom end, and then there was certain things I'd like to use the K series, and they really did have a different sound, and you could be really like bass. I always loved the E series on the bass.
Yeah, I mean there is a fundamental difference between the low frequency section on the E series and the G series EQ. The G series tried to do something quite clever with the way that it basically, if you plotted the curve, it wasn't a straight curve, it had a hump in it before it went down, whereas E series was more of a linear curve, and so they did have different characteristics and a different sound to them. But yeah, so I mean, to be honest, that was a feature we introduced on the 9000 console with the switchable E and G. The only thing that we did change is that, and it is in the original G series EQ, that was around the time Focusrite had introduced some EQs that had switchable mid-band frequency. So instead of putting bell curves on the high frequency and low frequency, they actually did a ×3 and a divide by 3 for the mid-frequency sections. And the G series EQ in the 4000 console copied that. then people was like, oh, you lost the bell switches from the LF and F to have this ×3 divide by 3. So in some ways it kind of reduced the functionality of the EQ a little bit. Gave it a different sound, admittedly, but when we did 9000, when we did AWS and Duality, we said, okay, well, we're not going to have the divide by 3 ×3 thing. We'll just put bell switches in the LF and HF sections, because that was kind of a more popular request.
More of a Swiss Army knife, isn't it, to have those?
It
I'd
is,
prefer
yeah.
that.
I mean, and in some ways, that's one of the things that's been quite interesting about developing this digitally controlled analog EQ, is that SSL EQs traditionally are sophisticated in terms of their parametric control. Quite often with EQs, you find they have a switched frequency or they have a switched Q, and
Or from fixed.
yeah, and whereas SSLs traditionally have always had swept functions for all of those things, and that means you need quite a lot of electronics to make all of those sweeping things work, and you need the huge resolution that you need in digitally controlled analog to make that an imperceptible thing as far as the console is concerned.
One question.
Yeah.
If you saved this to a snapshot, so you've done a mix, you saved it to a snapshot.
Yeah.
You went away, you came back the next day, you loaded it up. How accurate, bang on accurate is that?
Within tenths of a dB.
Yeah.
Honestly, within
Yeah.
tenths of a dB, because it's numbers at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Yeah, it's numbers at the end of the day. Yeah, so
About as close as you could. Well, it would be imperceptible, wouldn't it?
Audibly wouldn't.
I mean, with the original SSL Total Recall, we designed, that was the analog manual recall.
Yeah.
We designed that to be accurate within quarter of a dB, because the accepted learning at the time was that was the limit of perception as far as a human ear was concerned. And this is well within, this is tenths of a dB as opposed to.
I'd challenge anyone to hear that.
Yeah.
It would be very difficult indeed.
Challenge
I mean,
accepted.
yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately, they are analog circuits, so you will have. But I mean, one of the things that's also quite interesting about development and testing of this console is that one of the huge benefits in many ways is that with an analog channel strip currently, you make it, and to test it, somebody's got to go there and twiddle knobs and put signal through it. Now we've got digitally controlled analog channel strips. A computer can do all that switching and sweeping, and what that means is also that we can measure things and say, that gain is not quite as it should be, and so you can adjust things in tables as opposed to with pots and with trim pots and all that sort of thing.
So it's like digital trim, essentially.
Exactly, yeah, and so that also benefits the repeatability of, in terms of the manufacturing of channel strips. The consistency of manufacturing is an order of magnitude better than it's just possible to do with ordinary analog testing. And in some ways, that's another part of the development cost that nobody ever sees for some of these things, is that for every piece of equipment that we design, we have to design equipment that's going to test that piece of equipment for manufacturing purposes. So in some ways, you design a product 2 or 3 times as part of the single product that you actually launch, because as far as manufacturing is concerned, they need a way to test it, and that's.
Of course, and then that ultimately ends up in the price of the console, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It has to.
you've got to.
So yeah, that again, this is part of people. Consoles are far greater than the sum of their parts.
Yeah.
If you have a stereo compressor and times it by 24, it's going to be a lot cheaper potentially than developing an entire console with those things in. It's
I mean,
too many more parts to conceive of.
And ultimately, what you want to do is you want to create a tool that's going to make a session run quickly, that's going to put somebody time.
This is going to
you can argue the days about analog and digital, but analog fundamentally has been a slower workflow than digital, and this is part of trying to level. Exactly, this is part of trying to level that game up a little bit.
Whenever I talk to anyone about that whole analog digital debate, it all comes down to kind of workflow, saving the session as it is, and I say to them, I've got all what you're talking about, I have in my current system, and this just adds to that. But now if money was no object, or you can have as much recallability as you get within a digital session as you do in the analog domain.
Yeah.
I thought I prefer the VU meters, but I don't.
Oh no, I prefer these.
Same.
Yeah.
Well, these are
Get a lot
more.
data.
Because you got
These are
large
more
fader and
accurate,
small
aren't they?
fader
The
on
VU
that.
meters are more.
You don't
like
have that
Phil
with
Vintage,
the VU meter, do you? Do you have the large fader and small meter?
Yeah, you do actually. What you don't have is stereo, but you do have the large fader and the small fader. There's no signal on the small fader path at the moment, but if
Yeah.
I switch the VU meter, if I press play, there's actually 2 meters.
Blimey.
Something that you could never do with an analog meter. Basically. It's got 2 points. It's got
against each other in the
So you were saying about inserts pre and post.
That's unbelievable. That's crazy.
output on the main bus. One of the things, obviously, that's
You
quite
can have
fun
one
to
or the
do.
other.
Yeah.
That's
You
cool as well.
You don't have to switch the whole thing. Yeah.
One thing, obviously, with consoles, famous, it's quite nice to do is to push into the headroom
Yeah.
as much as you can. And obviously, you generally might want to trim that down with the master fader.
Yeah.
And obviously, having inserts before and after that gives you quite an option about whether you want to compress, for example, after that trim, or if you want to hit that compressor still really hard before post trim, so that when you're printing on mix back, that's all possible with this, I guess, isn't it? What's the headroom like on this? Do you know?
So
That's just pulling a number out of your head here for the moment.
no,
because
it's not.
that's
So
remembering.
the absolute headroom is about 26.5 dB. That's where the rails are. The meters meter up to plus 24 dB, and the overload comes on 2 dB below headroom. So it's a bit below absolute clipping. So and the overload circuit is differently sourced than the metering. Because it's faster, basically.
Right.
So hitting the overload isn't the end of the world.
Because it can be a momentary.
Yeah, exactly.
Or even then, it's analog, isn't it?
Exactly.
So,
yeah. So it doesn't kind of crunch like a sort of it doesn't clip like a digital clipping system.
What was that on your AWS? You had the button that you said plus. What was it? Plus.
The plus
Plus 10 doesn't.
10.
Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah, it's exactly the same. Yeah, basically.
Because this is the thing, mixes quite often end up, fairly low sometimes.
So you can see there's
Oh,
a plus
yeah,
10 button in
And
here.
you
So
cycle over to
yeah.
that.
So
That gets used a lot.
Yeah.
So basically you can the meter scale currently is 0 to minus infinity. It's
And
now
then you're
10
now
10 to
plus
minus
10,
infinity.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and there's one of those on each one of those main buses as well. So
Great.
so you can switch all of them. Yeah.
What about the groups?
Not on the
So
groups.
it's purely on the before buses.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's important to know. So can you feed the groups to those buses?
Yeah.
Then that's the way to cascade it. Then I'm just thinking that
Well, yeah.
if you really wanted to drive into the buses to do
yeah,
that,
and I say that, but there is actually 10 dB of gain in the unity on the
Oh, of
groups.
course, yes.
So,
Yeah, I'm just thinking. Well, that of course, because the buses don't have that plus 10 dB.
no, they don't have a switch to do that
Well,
because the fader goes to plus 10 basically.
Yeah. Okay. So
Whereas-
essentially, it's all to do.
Yeah. So traditionally on an SFL console, the master fader only went to zero, to
Yeah.
unity.
Yes, absolutely.
And it was only
and the
it was-
buses do on this as well.
Yeah, and it was with duality that we introduced. Well, duality and AWS we introduced that 10
So,
dB.
so with the plus 10 dB button, you've essentially created that same uniform boost across the whole
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
console.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And the other thing that this console has on it after its insert point, its main bus insert point, is it's got a plus and minus 5 dB balance control. And that's because some analog equipment, if you've got a stereo analog compressor and it's not very well aligned, pound to a penny, you go into it, you come out of it, and it'll be the balance that's coming out isn't what you sent into it, and so it just allows you to rebalance something that's coming back from a valve
really
insert point. Yeah. So yeah.
So one of the things you can do with these sort of analog consoles, obviously, is it really gets a lot of nice, pleasurable sound out of it. Is like on the AWS, we'll keep the faders up, hit the plus 10 dB, trim the output, and you'll be hitting that headroom, and it's kind of like a natural compression at some point, isn't it? It's a gluey sound. It's nice. What's good about this, obviously, is you could essentially go link all faders. And just gradually turn the whole thing up while bringing down the master output and just hear what that sound does. It'd be nice if you could do like an opposite link.
Yeah.
So you could just push them all up and then it detects that it auto
yeah.
trims for you. But how many more features do you possibly need?
How would you integrate this into your studio with your outboard compressors and stuff to get?
I'd have it all on the inserts. I'd use all the inserts. I'd plug everything. I'd have West Audio, 24 channels of West Audio EQ and compression on my small fader. I'd then have on my large fader, I'd have 24 EQs, SSL EQs with 24 West Audio compressors. Then I'd have 16 stereo buses, which would also have all my other EQs and compressors on there as basically bus compressors. And then I'd have my mix bus. That'd be mental. And then I'll go and get another rack and do it all again.
And literally at the touch of a button, the whole studio will load up.
Everything. I think that's going to work out at something like 250 channels of digitally recallable analog gear. It's just going to go boink. Which is crazy.
The lights of Harlow will dim.
Yeah.
And you recall it.
Literally.
Well, I mean, that is, another side to this thing is so, people hark about, euphonics doing this in.
Yes.
If you saw the amount of rack and power and cooling you needed to keep you had to have a machine room, you couldn't have it in the same room. Whereas this is, it's more power than an AW. It's about equivalent of a couple of AWSs, I would say.
Yeah. Well, the thing, that's fair to say there is I think the AWS is shockingly low.
It is. It's about 600 watts
Yeah.
AWS. And the racks here are typically 600. Well, this is virtually, it's 100 odd so watts at most, I would say, and the racks would be about 600 to 800 watts each when they're.
So maximum 1700 at best, I suppose.
It easily run off a 30 amp socket, the whole thing. Yeah.
And don't forget, Paul, you've also got your APB analog plugins that will be going within the chain as well.
So there will be before. So there's 88 EQs and compressors before it gets to this.
Oh, sorry, cup of tea or coffee?
Oh yeah, that's a good shout.
I'll have a
It's only instant, I'm afraid. But
I'll have a
fine.
black tea.
Black tea.
Black coffee,
please.
Black coffee's fine.
I'll have a white tea if there is such a thing.
So Paul, you've sat in front of the console, you've had an EQ, you've done some compression. How do you feel now?
I love it. But here's the thing, is I was expecting it to sound incredible. The sound of it, I had no doubts it was going to sound like an SSL console. I knew that was what it was going to sound like. What I wasn't quite prepared for was the amount of functionality that it's got. Like before, I had an idea of what it was, the function and what it could do. But since sitting here and actually using it and having a demonstration on what it can do, that's the difference of me going, it's an expensive console, and going, this is actually a console that is, I could say affordable, but it's not. It's a console that's it should be a lot more, in my opinion. It really should.
Yeah, it sounds brilliant, and it actually, like the way it integrates with Pro Tools, and will speed up the process of you loading up, basically doing a load of recalls every day.
The recall alone, that just speeding up workflow for me, that's just, that's why, like, I haven't gone down the route of buying a console for this very reason, because this console's never existed. This type of console hasn't existed. Now it exists, and I'd be stupid not to go and get one, because that's, like, in my eyes, as someone that works doing an online mixing service, that's the dream console. If I was working with attended sessions, I had clients coming in and it's like, right, finish the mix, they go away with their mix and they're happy, never to be returned to the desk. I could pick any console I want, but due to the fact of the way that I work, I have to have a console like this. So now this is available. It's only one console that I'll be looking at, and that's this one.
Yeah. And so to get I know you're a big fan of compression and dynamics, so you've got a plan of getting dynamics on every channel, haven't you?
I've got 24 channels on small fader, which are going to be West Audio EQ and compression. Then I've got on my large fader, I have 24 channels of EQ. Then I'm going to put 24 channels of West Audio dynamics. And then on the 16 buses, I'm then going to put EQ and compression on each of those buses, but they're going to be more in your larger 19-inch rack West Audio units and better maker units. In total, I think and I'm going to have to count this up, but I think there's going to be roughly around 250 channels of digitally recallable analog processing once I put this in.
Because you've also got the APBs coming in, which will go kind of in the
So they'll be
pre.
before, yeah.
They'll go pre all the channel EQ and stuff.
So all of what I mentioned just then, that's all on the console. Before we even come out to the console, we'll have all the APB processing. So you'll have all the APB, then you'll come out into the console, and that's where all the West Audio gear will be inserted onto that.
And are you thinking of you might get a flock patch to get towards the buses so you can move the order of your 19-inch rack?
So yeah, so I've got the flock patch already. So I've got 32 channel flock, 32 in, 32 out. That's going to sit on that, on the on those 16 buses. I may have to get a bigger one, but everything that's on the 24 channel, the 48 channels of EQ and compression, they're gonna be fixed kind of on the inserts, so that's not going to make too much difference. And that's the great thing about what's great about this console is you can switch the routing, so you can have the EQ, the insert before the EQ, after EQ. Whereas if to do that, as I'm working at the moment, to do that, I have to kind of I have to actually patch that differently within the flock, for instance. So I don't have that option. So it's nice to have that on the actual console. And it's sort of press of a button.
And then out of the master bus, you're going to have a digital recallable comp and EQ, and that's it. Into the lull, maybe.
Well, I don't know. On the master bus, I'll probably just stick with the bus comp that I was just using it just then, and it sounds brilliant. So I don't know whether I'd put anything extra. The one thing I might put onto the master bus is the West Audio Tube EQ. I might put that onto the insert, only because it has this lovely rich tone in the low end, and that really does print this amazing sound to it. And then also maybe just to get more flexibility, having an EQ on that master bus. We'll see. But then even so, is that's going to print, and then I'll work in another session for the mastering of the track, which I bring all the gear back in to then use it all again. I'm an absolute fiend when it comes to this stuff. I love it.
Mike and Neil have just showed us, really run through everything about this desk, really gave you a hands-on experience.
The thing with that is, when you're spending this sort of money on a console, it's like when you're spending this sort of money on speakers. You know, you're fitting an Atmos system that's 60 grand. You want to hear it, you want to experience it. There's certain things you want to do. When it comes to a console, you know, I want to hear how it sounds. I also want to see how it functions, if it's right for me. I knew before I even came here it was right for me. I knew there was, you know, I weren't going to come down here and go, nah. I was already sold before I got here. But to be able to actually sit in front of the console, get an idea for what it feels like, how it sounds, it's important. And it is important, because the last thing you want to do is buy a console and then get it back to your studio, put it in and go, oh, damn it, it's not the one for me. And, you know, people do that all the time with speakers, because they don't get to do like these sorts of, and this is the one thing that, like, you know, with the whole speaker thing, is it's like, you can go to a studio and you can listen to the speakers in that studio and they sound great there, but it's only then when you get it into your studio, it's like, oh no, they don't sound as good as they did there. And I guess it's similar with a console, but you can get in on that console and having a go on it and really kind of hearing what it sounds like. Because the thing is as well, the sound of the console isn't the most important thing for me. Functionality is as much importance as how it sounds for me, because of, you know, I'll go on record, say it's a game changer, and it is revolutionary, and it has for me, and I don't say this a lot, and I rarely ever say the word game changer. It's a buzzword that a lot of people use, and I would say this is well up there as kind of the game changer for me. It might not be a game changer for someone else, but for me it is a game changer, because it's it's a console that I can actually love, and the reason I can is because I've always wanted this fully 100% digitally recallable console, and to now have that, and it is 100%. Like there's recallable consoles, but they're not 100% digitally recallable, and that's, to me, that's pointless. I don't want that, and that's me personally.
So how valuable has it been for you that you could have this experience coming down to SSL today?
Well, I know I ain't wasted my money. This is the thing. Is that I know what I'm buying. If I literally pick that up and put that in my studio now, I know I know exactly what that is, and that, you can't put a price on that, can you?
Was it a good experience coming down with Dale and spending a day here?
Yeah, it's it's. I'll tell you what was good. Going to the event and first seeing it, doing all that sort of stuff. That's really good. Getting a kind of taster for it, and then to actually come down and hearing it, because you don't get to hear it at that event. And I don't think I walked away from that event not as buzzed about this. I mean, if we watch the video back of what we've just done on this demo, there's moments in that I'm like, because there's moments of realization of, oh my god, that is going to change my workflow. Those are the little things that, because for me, is if I can see something that changes my workflow, speeds me up 5 minutes, that's 5 minutes. That's a knock-on effect of multiple tracks. So that 5 minutes over the course of a day is 30 minutes. That 5 minutes, 30 minutes per day is now 2-3 hours. I've now got another mix done in a week because of that. So all things like that, that's all what's important to me, and that's what a digital console does. But yeah, to answer the question on how valuable it is, it's highly valuable, because who else does this? That's why I work with you guys, because who does? I've worked with everybody. I bought gear with everyone. No one wants to take me places.
How much fun was it checking out the factory, seeing all the consoles get built?
I've always wanted to come here. I've always wanted to come down. It's kind of like, we all dream about SSL. To be in a position to be buying one, it's amazing. And every engineer, it doesn't matter who you are, you've all dreamed. You've dreamt of having an SSL. Of course you have. I dreamt of it for many, many, many years. So much so that we'd buy an SSL X desk. I've got an SSL console. You know what I mean? That's an SSL console. That's what you aspire to get, and that's in my eyes at the moment. That's the proper. That is the king of consoles at the moment. So yeah, thank you for bringing me down. All that you've done.